Good afternoon, guys. Welcome you all again. Our day three of webinar. Today's lecture about day of firewall. Actually, it's related to the firewall, all about mm, if it is on a router side or it's on ASA, Cisco ASA. So I'll try to cover lab also for related topic. If I had heard, if I have some more times, then I will explain ASA lab also. So the first topic is today's, that is the reflexive access list. We already know about the access list, right? So what access list do? It's just used for filter, look like a permit. We can permit or deny any of your network traffic. If you wanna block something or if you wanna permit something, then we can use access list, right? So there is it mainly two types of access list. We already know about that: the standard access list and the extended access list. And for limitation of a standard and extended access list, we found that the Cisco come to with another access list, that is the name access list. So we already know all about that, but today is what we are trying to cover. This is the reflexive access list. What actually reflexive access list do? By default, an access list on a Cisco router doesn't keep track of any connection, right? So only one thing that is care about, that is where the incoming packet is matching certain statement of your ACL or not. If it is matching, then based on the ACL, you will farm it or deny, right? And what if other site, if you take a example, say so said this is, there is a 3 router, R1, R2 and R3. So let's say this is your border router. When your this is your internet site, we can say, for the sake of example, say this is your internet router. So when you don't wanna come any connection into your networks from the outside, right? So that's why you will block all the traffics that coming from the internet to your network, right? That's why you'll let's say you are denying all the traffic that is coming from the internet, right? Then what you will do? You will do say like access list. The rules is deny IP any, right? So the rules will be the deny IP any, right? So what will happen when you will putting the deny IP any command on your router? So it will block all the incoming connection that is coming from internet to your network, right? So let's say this is your internet. Then when any traffic traffic that coming from the internet to your network, it will block or deny all the traffics in R2 interface, right? Because there is an ACL to deny all the traffic, right? So so you don't want to come any connection from internet, right? That's why you are blocking all the traffic. But beside that, when so let's say you are trying to access something on internet. Let's say there is a web server on internet. That so when you will send a request to in web server, right? So what happened? The connection will go the web server, right? But beside that, the web server has to reply on that request, right? When the incoming packet is coming into your router, it will also block, right? because you already denied all the IPN, deny IPNN command on your interface to block all the traffic that coming from the internet to your router. So how we can actually mitigate those issues? We want to block all the traffic that would coming from the internet. Also, we want to allow the traffic that is originating from your source, that is R1 to your web server, also need to allow to perform his action, right? So in that scenario, we have to configure the reflexive access list. So what reflexive access list do? He will track all the connection that is originating from your source, that means inside your network, and when based on that, he will allow you connection that is coming from the internet. Make sense, guys? So this is actually the main thing why reflexive access list need to configure, right? So if we go back to our lab to check out the issue how it actually it works, then you will get more about that. So let's say this is your three router, R1, R2, R3, and make sure the router. Let's say this is your three router. Okay. So from R1 to R1, this is your for the question example. So this is your LAN site. We have to configure and we'll configure this is your one site, right? So to check out or configure this issue, we have to first start. Actually, we have to start all the three steps. Okay, first we have to configure basic things on our router. So first let me increase the font size of the console. I think it would be better for. So we have to configure the basic thing first. So let me configure the basic configuration on the three router. Then I will explain what actually we are trying to do. So first we have to configure the host name of the router, right? Host name R1 and on the IP address of gig 0x0, right? So interface gig 0x0, IP address would be 192.168.12.1 and the subnet mask 255.255.0 and need to no shard the interface, right? So and also uh, we have we need actually a static route to reach the 23.0/24, right? So to avoid, okay, I will what we'll do, we'll put a static command for 23 network 192.168.23.0 to 55 to 55 to 55.0 to 55 and the next address is 192.168.12.2. Okay, so these are our basic configuration of R1, and in R2 site, what we'll do, first we need to change the host name on R2, then we need to configure the interface gig 0x0. The IP address is 192.168.12.2 and the subnet mask is 255 to 55.0, no short command, and also need to configure gig 0x1. The IP address of gig 0x1 is 192.168.23.2 to 55 to 55.0 and no short. So if we check the interface status, show IP interface bit, see to interface is coming up and the IP already set. So nothing need to configure on R2 at this moment. Just we have to configure the R3 router. So R3 host name R3 interface gig 0x1 IP address 192.168.23.3 5 to 55.0 no shut, and also need a static route for 12 network, right? So IP route 192.168.12.0 to 55 to 55 to 55.0. The next address is 23.2, right? So if we check the interface IP of R1 in 192.168.12.1, so we are able to reach the R3 router. Also need to configure the IP HTTP server on interface, right? So IP HTTP server. So that's on inter site. To make sure we are also getting ping response from R3 from R1. Ping 192.168.23.3 is the R3 IP, right? 23.3. So we are getting response. So what actually we need to do? First, we have to configure the ACL to deny everything that is coming from internet, right? So to do that, we have to configure an R2. So we have to configure the access list, IP access list extended, say 100. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to deny everything that. So deny IP any, that means any source to any destination, right? And then we'll what we'll do, we'll place this extended access list on our interface gig 0 by 1, because we are trying to block all the incoming connection that is coming into R2 router via gig 0 by 1. So interface gig 0 by 1 is the interface, and IP access group 100 in. So it's applied. So if we now check the ping towards the 23, you see, so we are not getting seeing response. So another thing, just for your information, we are creating access list with a deny IP and any. So if you remember, we don't need to give the deny IP and any, because it's already there when we configure any access list. But why when enter why we are doing this here? Because if we configure a deny IP any number, then advantage of adding it is that you will see the number of packets that are dropped this way. That means when any packet, if we don't configure deny IP any on interface access list, the access list would not show anything, because it's the hidden implicit DNA on access list. But when we will configure the deny IP any access list, so it will show how many packet is dropping, right? So it's the advantage of configuring deny IP any of any access list. So in R1, we are unable to ping, right? So if we check the telnet, say telnet 192.168.183.3, the IP in 80 port, because we already open the static port. So see, we are unable to do that also, right? So reason already I said, if we, let's see if we found any log, show log. So actually we need to debug run the debug command here. So debug IP packet. What will access list? Okay, debug IP access list. Okay, we use the TCP packet, or just TCP packet. If we debug the TCP IP packet on R2, and if we now try to telnet or see, so is there any packet count or no? Okay. But if we check the show access list, see, we are not getting the debug command or debug package, but what we are getting, that is the deny IPNAME command is message is 13, right? That means it's denying everything of that is coming from internet to R2. That's why we are unable to or telnet or browse the 80 port on R3 router, right? So to allowing the packet is okay. And also you check from R3 side. If you check from R3 side, see we are unable to ping from R3 also, right? So now we'll configure the reflexive access list, right? To enable the packet that's originating from internal network towards the internet. So how we can do that? To configure the reflexive access list. So it's the same thing to we have to configure the access list. So IP access list is the command, then extended, that is for outbound, right? So outbound, we just using the name outbound. Then permitting IP any. But so in this way we can permit any of the rules, right? But after that we have to use a keyword that is reflect, and the reflect will actually store the connection what we naming here. So we are naming here is evaluate. It can be any name, right? So we are naming evaluate, and we will apply this access list on our interface. So the interface is gig, where we will apply this on, we'll apply on gig 0 by 1, right? So interface gig 0 by 1 IP access group, the name would be the outbound and for out, right? So now if we check the connection from R1, sorry, we are at the thing we have to configure. We have to configure also the inbound connection also, right? We are just creating the outbound access list. So outbound access list, what he do, he is just storing the connection on evaluate access list. So then we have to configure the access list for inbound. So to configure the inbound access list based on the evaluate, how we can do that? So IP access list extended, that is for inbound, and we will use here just evaluate keyword, because we are not allowing everything here, we just allowing that would be on evaluate access list, right? So what evaluate will store, it will store those connections that will originating from inside to outside. Make sense, guys? So we just allowing this access list from inside. Then we have to configure inbound access list on our gig 0 by 1. So IP access list, access group, and the command, the access list we are using for inbound, and that is for in. That's all. Now if we check from here, from R1, let's see, we are able to ping from R1 to R3. This is R3 IP. Also, if we check the telnet, see this showing open. So now if we check from R3 to R1, see it's still not reachable because the access list is blocking all the requests from outside to inside. So to check the access list on R2, how actually look like the R2 access list. evaluate access list. Show access list. See, we are not allowing the packet 23.3. We didn't apply these rules, and also we didn't apply these rules, right? It's automatically applied on interface, right? And it will be on access list for 230 second. It's 270 second. So that's all about reflexive access list. So why actually it's using a tool when we are trying to block everything from internet to inside. Inside we have to enable the packet that's originating from internal network to outside, right? So that's why we are configuring a reflexive access list. So guys, if you have any question, you can write down on your question answers. It's on screen size and font size in this place. I already increases the console font size. So Ibrahim, are you able to see the console write up what I'm writing here clearly? Ibrahim, you there? Ibrahim? Okay. So guys, if you have a question, okay, please. Okay, we can take a question for this access list, and what you need to confirm me, you are able to see the console write up what I am writing here. It's clear to you, Ibrahim? Ibrahim, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Are you able to see the screen write up clearly?
Understand what do you?
I am writing or configuring
Yes,
something
common
on
promote is putting visible and
okay. Okay, so we can take two question, one question from Mr. Ahad and one question Mr. Rex. So can you allow them to raise their question?
you need to rename rename. Please ask your question.
Okay.
Sir,
Mr. Abdullah, your microphone also.
yes, yes. In case of a reflexive access list, in my network have any public server, like if inside my network have any web server, then in that case reflexive server will not effective. Yes, sir.
Yes, it will not affect it. Right. So in that scenario, we will take another thing. We are coming that part in our next presentation. Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
So I just summarize what I've done in my lab. So that's for Mr. Kamrul Hassan, BO PD. So what I have done in here, same. I have configured this is as a internet or LAN site, right? And this is for our internet site. So when you are trying to block all the incoming connection that is coming from internet to your local LAN, you are blocking all the connection, right? That's why you're denying IP any, right? So deny IP any means everything will block that is that connection originating from the internet side. Beside that, when you apply this command, your internal connection also blocking, because the empty connection need to reply. Say if you are generating any connection from inside to outside, it's also need to coming back your source, right? So if you just dealing from inside, you are not blocking inside to outside, so the connection is going to the outside, there is no issue. But when the packet is coming into the R2 router, due to DNA IP any access list on the gig 0 by 0, all the in connection that is coming from internet will be blocked. So that's why we are configuring the reflexive access list. So when configuring the reflexive access, it's just keeping track what connection is going from internal network to outside. So when connection is originating from here, the reflexive access list is just tracking all those connection, and also is just allowing those connection from outside. So we are just done that part here, and also check we are blocking here everything, and also configure reflexive access list. When we are configuring reflexive access list, we are able to ping from here to here, and also telnet 80 port from here to here, but we are unable to ping from R3 to R1. Make sense, guys? Okay. So moving forward, so this all about reflexive. I already put it on the how configuration is, and so it's already in your presentation. You will get after the class. So another things we know about the CBAC, that is the context-based access control list. So what is the CBAC and why we need to configure the context-based access control list? So it's nothing. It's the firewall for Cisco IS router that offers some more feature than simple access list. So CBAC is able to inspect up to layer 7. What means it can inspect the traffic from up to layer 7 or layer 2 to layer 7, and can dynamically create rules to allow return traffic. That's already have done in reflexive access list, right? So it's almost similar to reflexive access list, but what reflexive access list do, it can only up to layer 4 of OSI layer. That means it can inspect only up to layer 4, but in CBC it can track, or it can inspect up to layer 7. So that's why we need to configure CBC or a CBAC in our router, that is context-based access control list. So if we took an example, then it would be clear to you, right? So let's say this is your external network. Let's say this is your external network, right? So, and this is your internal network. We already seen that when any traffic that is going towards the internet, when you're blocking something here, it will automatically drop all the incoming connection that is coming into your network. But when you are trying to something doing on our router that is related to the layer 7, that would not possible by a reflexive access list to block or inspect, right? So to do that, we have to configure save route. So CBAC, that means context-based access control list, actually inspect all the traffic that is originating from source to outside and farm it or DNA as per access control list. So how actually we can do that? So we will check into the lab, but how many feature we can find on CBAC, that is we can inspect traffic via CBAC, and we can inspect filtering based on that, also detecting intrusion and generating alerts and audit using the CBAC. So if you want to check how actually it works, then we to go back into our lab again, then we'll configure the CBAC again. So before configuring the CBAC, I have to remove all the configuration on our 3 route. Okay, we don't need to remove all those things on R2 and R3. But what we can do remove all the access list on R2. That or better. So, better we are erasing all the configuration on R2. So all configuration is been removed. Okay. Because we did not save anything on R1, R2, and R3. So when we are stop or shut down the router, it will erase all the configuration from running config. So that's so we have to. Okay, let's configure on the router again. So So let's check the interface status. So interface up and also check the route for 23 networks, also applied 23 static route for, and we get back to the R2 router. We are on R3. This time R3 that is connected to R2 via gig 0x1. So interface gig 0x1 IP address would be 23.3. The subnet mask is same, short down, and also 12.0, 55 to 55 to 55.0, 23.2. Right. Show IP route. Show IP route that is for 12 network via 23.2. And the interface status to show IP interface free. So it's up 0x1. And if we go back to R2, config R2 interface gig 0x0 IP address 192.168.12.2 0 no short interface 0x1 IP address 23.2. If we check the interface status, the two interfaces coming up. Now if we again check from R1 to R3 reachability, so that is 23.3, right? So it's reachable. Also, if we check the HTTP service on R3, 23.3, 80 port, it's not open yet, so I have to configure the HTTP server on R3 router. So IP HTTP server on R3. Now if we ping R1 router, okay. Show IP route. If we now check the reachability from R3 to R1, the R1 IP is 12.1. So the basic configuration is done to configure the content is access control list. So what we will do, same thing, we will configure the access list to deny everything on R2 from the internet first. So we have to configure the access list from denying everything from internet. So to order that, we have to configure IP access list extended. So just naming it deny all from internet. So that what we're trying to deny IP any and log to show the log, and I have to apply this one on gig 0x1. So IP access group, what with the name will be the deny from in. So again, if we check from R1 to R3, see, same, we are unable to ping, and from R3 to R1, same. So also if we check the telnet, it's blocking everything, right? So the access list is very effective. It will drop everything from the internet. So I read the deny PN in log. So we can see the drop packet on the console. So we don't have to add. It's because everything is by default, right? So if you now check on R2, you see I just enabled the log. Now you are seeing the log, what he's doing right now. So he's denying everything, denying from ICMP, that is going from 23 to 12.1, right? And that is one packet he's denying, right, from outside. So he's not dropping anything from inside to outside. He's dropping just that the packet that coming from outside. That's why you're getting two log, right? That is also from 23.3 is the source, 23.3 is the source, and the destination is 12.1. So one packet you see the ICMP and another is TCP. So when we are trying to reach via 80 port, is using the TCP, say the TCP, and when we are trying to ping, it's use the ICMP protocol. That's why we are seeing the ICMP in here, right? So what he is actually doing, he is actually blocking is formatting. He's formatting everything that is originating from here to here, right? So he's not blocking anything. So it's formatting, that is format. But what he's doing, he's actually denying here, right? So he's just when you're trying to ICMP, say ICMP echo request, he's formatting, right? When the echo reply is coming back into the R1, R2 is dropping here. So what dropping here? The ICMP echo reply, right, guys? So if we check back again, see on R2 router, so see is just denying from 23.3 to 12.1, right? So to avoid such kind of situation or avoid some kind of issues on our network, so we have to configure spivak. So how we can configure that part? So to do that, first IP inspect, I just naming okay, IP inspect, we can name anything, so I'm just giving the name firewall. And for what protocol? So if we just check this, we will find lots of option here, right? So we'll allowing IP inspect for the HTTP request, right? So I just allowing right at this moment only HTTP, right? So now if we allow this inspect command on R2 outgoing interface on gig 0x1, let's see what happens. So interface gig 0x1 is our interface, then IP inspect firewall, right? What will be the name? Name will be the same, and the out, right? So what he will do, he will actually keep track or tracking the connection, right? So when some packet is originating from source or local network, you will keep tracking that connection and allowing based on that. So if we now check from R1 to R3 via, okay, first we check the ICMP request, ping 23 dot, it is still blocking, right? It's still blocking, right? So if we now check the 80 port, now see it's open, because we are just inspecting or allowing only the HTTP request, right? So if we check the inspect session here, how it's look like, show to ops. Okay, you can see just we are getting only the ICMP DNAC request, right? Okay, so if we check show IP inspect session, see it's allowing from 12.1 to 8 to 380 port, right? The session is open. So that's why when the request coming back into the 12.1 from carrying HTTP request is the just allowing that request, right? So if we again ping 23, still it's not reaching, right? So how we can actually check all the inspect rules that's applied on our interface, right? So the command is show IP inspect all is the command to this, that you can see the IP inspect command is applied on gig 0x1. The rule name is firewall, and that is set for outgoing interface, right? So the inbound access list already there, that is dealing on from internet. That's why the ICMP connection is dropping here. So when, but right now we are only allowing the HTTP traffic through the access list, right? So if you want to less restrict firewall, you can also permit entire protocol like TCP or UDP. So the best example, we have to configure or inspect name firewall with the name same. So we'll just firewall name TCP, and also we will use this is for UDP, and we will use this is for ICMP also. So if we are just doing this for command on CVAC, this will ensure that 90% of traffic that originating from land to out land to outside and outside to inside will permit it. So if something blocking on that R2 router, then you have to do that on manually, right? Based on your log. So again, if you check from R1 using ICMP, you see it's now allowing, right? Because we just inspecting ICMP also on R2 router. So the thing is, the example of what I have shown in here is apply the traffic that is flowing through your router, right? But it doesn't apply the locally generated traffic from the router itself. I mean on R2 router. So let me show you what I mean by sending a ping from R2 to R1. So from R2 here, when I'm pinging 192.168.12.1, you see this is formatting, right? So if I wanna block everything that is or formatting everything on here, so you have to allow self routing also. So to do that, we have to inspect router traffic also. So to configure that part, so IP inspect name Mr. Had, I'm taking question just few seconds. No, let me allow. Oh, the firewall self take it also. So IP inspect name firewall TCP. That's already we applied, right? So after that, we just have to allow router traffic also for TCP UDP. Right. So if we allow this way, it will also allow router itself for incoming connection. So least part no, or the last part, right at this moment, the connection that is originating from source network to internet, that's just allowing that connection, but the connection that is not the connection from the internet, all are blocking still now, right? So if we check from here, from R3, at 12.1, it's still blocking, right? So if you want allow something from internet, let's say you route, you have to configure your router, but you are on remote side, you have to allow the telnet, right? So to do that, we have to configure, we have to allow the telnet port on R2 router. So what was our configuration for denying traffic? That is, if we see, we're denying IP access list, right? So it's denying everything. So what we will do, we will permit, say, we will permit, say, ICMP. We will only permit ICMP any. So we just formatting ICMP. So now if we check from R3 to R1, you see from internet to inside it's also formatting. So in this way, we can allow the SSH or telnet from outside or any web server that is on your internal network. You can allow them from outside. Make sense, guys? So in this way, we can configure the CBAC, I mean context-based access control on Cisco IS router. Hope you guys understand what I'm trying to deploy in here. If you have a question, you can write here right now. Can hacker break firewalls if they can? What should we do? So, step X. Actually, the firewall is trying to or limit the access from outside to inside, right? But there is also chance if we use the default username password and the something like that. So it's possible to break the firewall rules also. If we got the username password, it will be compromised, right? So we are configuring everything on our router inside, but if we just set the router password, default password or 12345 6 like that, then it should be compromised. So then the firewall, the hacker will break the firewall rules. So we have to ensure all the things at a time. Guys, do you have any question anymore? Ibrahim, can you allow Mr. Ahad? Ibrahim, are you there? Okay.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Abdullah?
yes, sir.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Sir,
I can hear you now.
Sir, it is shown me in the lab that when we configured extended list deny, then we apply in the gigabyte interface inbound, and later that when we apply inspect configuration in file HTTP, and then we apply in outbound configuration. But in the meantime, when I saw that you configure inspect allow the TCP UDP ICMP, then from R1 to R2 it was pingable. My question is that we configure only, we apply in the gigabyte interface 0/1 only outbound. We do not apply in the inbound configuration. Without inbound configuration, how IP inspect configuration allow the reply?
Okay. Thanks. I'm already there. They said that part. When inspecting something, that means your router is tracking which connection is going towards internet, right? So he will just allow everything that is going from inside to outside. So he will track from where to where connection is going, right? When he's getting the connection is going from here to here, when is the packet is coming from here to here, he is just allowing, right? So that's why we are inspecting something on R2 router, right? So we from inside we already denied everything, right? From inbound. So inbound rules denying everything from outside, but when applying anything on outbound using inspect command, what inspect command do? It will inspect the packet, the source address and the destination address and the protocol, right? I already said it can inspect up to layer 7. So when the package is originating from source, he is keep tracking the source address and the destination address, right? So when the packet is coming, then what will be the source address? The source address will be the R3 and the destination will be the R1, right? So it's already matching that he's keep on his access list, right? So that's why he's allowing the request. But when the request originating from R3, so it's not formatting his rows. That's why it's blocking. Got Mr. Ahad?
If you in briefly clear me that inspect command will allow the ICMP request automatically if we apply in the interface only outbound direction.
Sorry, can it again?
If we configure inspect inspect ACL in the interface, then if we declare only one direction, maybe suppose outbound, then we do not require declare we do not require apply inbound
direction, right?
Inbound direction.
Yeah, because we just what is our goal? Our goal is to allow everything that is request originating from inside to outside, right?
Yes,
that is our goal, but no, our goal is not to allow everything outside to inside, right?
But
So
but when we ping from 12.5 from R1 to R3, he must be he could reply to the
Reply.
R1. Yes.
Yeah, that's why inspecting means he's just tracking the connection, that where is the source and the destination. So it's already tracking on his access list, right? When is
Yes.
the request is originating from the internal, when the packet is coming back from the outside, he will match the access list matching with his tracking access list, right? Then he
Yes.
will farm it based on that. If it's not if the access not matching with that, he will deny everything, right?
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Okay, okay guys, let's move on our next topic. So I have already give you example and the configuration of the configuration you will find here, how to configure by your own. So another thing that is we can see, that is the zone-based firewall. So zone-based firewall is the most advanced method of stateful firewall that is available on Cisco iOS. That the idea behind the zone-based firewall is that we don't assign access list to the interface, but we'll create different zones. So I will coming what is the zone in next, but the, what the zone-based firewall will do, interface will be assigned to the different zones, not the access list. In earlier uh, lecture we found we have configured the access list, then apply the access list on our interface, right? But in zone-based firewall, we don't need to apply the access control list on the interface. But in here, we just the interface will be assigned to the different zones, and the security policy will be assigned to the traffic base between the zones. So to for better understanding what uh, we can do, say let's say this is your just forget about this one, right? At this moment, this one, okay. So let's say this is your inside to your R1 as per our topology, and this is R3 router that is on internet, right? So actually, when we need to we need to configure zone-based firewall on a router. Say, let's say you have to configure something that is the traffic, that is your LAN. So this is your LAN, and this is your one. Okay. Also, say let's say this is also DMZ, demilitarized zone. I will coming into that part next slide. So for the sake of example, you just remember that this is that another zone, that is the DMZ. So the traffic from the land is allowed. What if our target is traffic from land to one side allowed, but only the HTTP and HTTPS. That means from land to one, you have to configure which protocol? HTTP and HTTPS. Excuse me. From land is allowed to going towards the DMZ. That means you're just allowing from LAN to one HTTP and HTTPS. Also, you have to configure everything that is from LAN to DMZ allow. And from DMZ to LAN side would not allow, right? And DMZ to one side you have to allow. Also, outside to inside not allowed. So how many rules we have found here? We found 5 rules. If we check, first, we have to allow everything from LAN to one. Not everything, we have to allow LAN to 1 only HTTP traffic. That is LAN to 1. Another thing, we have to allow LAN to DMZ. That means we can communicate everything from LAN to DMZ zone. If we need to configure something like that, we have to we are unable to DMZ to LAN, unable to communicate DMZ to LAN. If you need to configure something like that from DMZ to 1, so that is the DNA, and also we have to DNA everything from 1 to LAN. That means 1 to LAN. So see how many to do configure this, how many access do we have to configure using the access list. You can do that, but you have to configure lots of access list. It would be the nightmare for any network administrator, right? So with the zone based firewall, we would not apply the security policy that intercept, but in the security zone, and it will be the easiest solution for the network administrator to configure everything on zone based firewall. So we can achieve all those things very easily on zone based firewall. But if you need to configure all those things on using access list, we have to configure lots of things, and we have to configure lots of interface, because it's involving say this is one interface, this is one interface, this is one interface, right? So we have to configure inbound access rule, we have to configure outbound access rule, we have to in the same way you have to configure outbound, inbound, outbound, inbound, right? And every interface we have to configure the ACL, right? So and achieving those parts, we have to configure lots of access list, right? So to avoid such situation, so we can use zone based firewall. So how we can do that? So see, there is 3 zones, right? LAN 1 and DMZ. LAN 1 and DMZ. So the correct interface, the interface are assigned to the correct zone, or we can apply the security zone to achieving those in the zone based firewall. So then what will found will do LAN to 1, LAN to if we configure the DMZ, what we need to configure LAN to 1, LAN to DMZ, same thing, 1 to LAN. One to DMZ, DMZ to LAN. So we just creating this zone pair, but we have to apply the policy under those zone pair. So to create a security policy for the traffic between the zone, we have to create the zone pair, and we have to configure the zone pair ourselves and apply a security policy to them to determine what traffic is permitted from one zone to another. So we have to attach all the policy to the zone pair. So if you look took an example, or it will be clear to us again. So to do that, what we can do, same way we can use this topology. land on an internet site, and we can also use the DNC letter. So I just remove all the configuration on R2. So Ibrahim, can you hear me? Ibrahim, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Have you faced any fluctuation?
No, I think everything is well.
Okay. People have found an interruption in my side. That's why I'm asking here. Okay. No issues. Okay, let me erase the configuration on R2. So right. Okay, it will the DRAM configuration. Right. So what I can do? Guys, allow me a few minutes. I'm getting our fluctuation. I have to fix that one. Again, just allow me sometimes because I'm getting a fluctuation in my network. I am trying to fix that.
Okay.
All right. We have to configure the R2 configuration. To do that, just removing all the gig interface JY1 interface config, right? Also the inspection command from here. So if we just remove or show run interface gig 0y1, and these two command did not affect anything that is configured on our router, right? So to do that, we have to remove access list from interface. So now everything is fine here, right? So if we check again from R1 to R3, we are not blocking anything. So from R1 to R3 router will ping, and also R3 to R1 12.1. So it's pingable. So what we need to configure at this moment, we have to configure the zone. So first, just let's introduce some terms that is related to the zone-based firewall. One is zone, another zone fair, and the self zone. So zone is locally area which the device having the some trust level. Actually, if you trust like a LAN, the how actually the traffic will be treated. So you can assign the interface which is belongs to your internal network. That it can be LAN zone, it can be one different name. Name can be different. If we denoted the LAN side is LAN, then you can put the LAN interface on the LAN zone. So by default, the traffic is not allowed from one zone to another. So it's the by default route. So zone pair is the policy what we need to define. So what action will be taken for the traffic. So it can be inspect, it can be deny, it can be permit. So we can apply those policy on the zone pair. So it zone pair is always unidirectional. You don't make make it the bidirectional. Let's say when we are configuring the access control list, say we are applying rules for inbound and also for the outbound. But when we are configuring any zone pair, so it's rules always the bidirectional. We don't need to configure another rules for two rules for any policy. And self zone is actually the traffics destined to the router. Actually, when we are configuring zone or zone pair, so it's just we'll say R1 to R3 via R2, right? So if the interface gig 0 by 0 on our left, say if say gig uh, 0 by 0 on your LAN zone, and the gig 0 by 1 is your one zone. But when it's just treating that the traffic going through your one zone to another, right? But what else if the traffic originating by itself, and traffic is say let's say R2 is trying to communicate R1, R2 to R2 to R3, then what will happen? Then we have to configure the self zone. That means the traffic generated from router to none as its traffic from self zone, right? So by default, the traffic to or from the self zone is allowed. So you don't need to, if you consider they are all the traffic that originating from R2, it's by default allowed. If you don't need to that, then you have to configure the self zone. Make sense, guys? So how we can configure the self zone security zone? Let's do that. So to do that, we have already remove all the configuration on our R2 interface. But at this moment, we have to configure the zone, right? So on R2, how can we configure the zone? The zone is the name and the security. What will be the name? The for the LAN we are naming at LAN, and the zone security for one we are naming as one, and for zone security for DMZ we are naming as DMZ. So now we are configuring three zone. So after that, we just configuring the zone. It's a name security name, right? So after that, we have to configure interface under the zone. So then we have to go back into the interface inside. So interface gig 0 by 0. So gig 0 by 0 will be on LAN side, right? LAN zone, right? So how can we configure that? So the zone member, the security, the name will be the LAN, right? And interface gig 0 by 1, it's same, zone member security will be the 1. So if we check the zone security, see we have configured the two zone. One, the member of the zone LAN is the gig 0 by 0, and the member of the zone 1 is gig 0 by 1. And another excuse me, another two zone also there. One is self zone, that is system defined zone. It's for the router itself, and another I have configured DMZ, but none of the member configured yet. So now we have to configure the zone pair. So zone pair is nothing, just we have to configure from which zone to which zone traffic will be forwarded. That means the zone pair is just defining, say, if you want to configure, say, traffic will source will be the LAN and the destination will be the 1. And another zone pair you have to configure to format or DNF from outside to inside, that source will be the 1 and destination will be the LAN. So we now we have to configure two zone pair. One is for LAN to 1, another is for LAN to 1. Let's do that. So zone pair, oops. So zone pair is the command. Zone pair is the command. Security name can be anything. So I just naming to LAN to 1. The source zone will be the LAN, and the destination will be the 1, right? So it's we just configuring the zone pair, and we can also description to understanding later which zone is configured for home. So we just configuring LAN to 1 traffic, right? So Another zone pair we have to configure for 1 to LAN, right? So 1 to LAN, then if you configure, then so what will be the source? Okay, missing something. Security 1 to LAN. The source will be the 1, right? And the destination will be the LAN, right? Then description, it's not mandatory. So you can do that, or you can do that. So I have configured to zone pair in here. So if we now see the zone pair, how it's look like, show security, sorry, show zone pair security. So you see we have configured to zone pair. One is the name is LAN to 1, another one is 1 to LAN. And the description already said the zone pair, no zone pair policy is configured yet, right? So we have configured the zone pair. Now if we check the inside to outside traffic, say earlier the ping was successful, right? So if we now ping from router 1 to router 3, 23.3, see, we are unable to do that. Because by default, when we configure the zone, by default, it's block everything, right? From one zone to another. So then we have to configure the policy under that. So policy, what could be the policy? So policy can be apply, that means permit or pass. Policy can be the drop. If you want to drop the anything, then we will use the drop and the inspect. We already know what is actually the inspect. So inspect nothing, just traffic permitted and the inspected. So the return traffic will be the allowed, right? So it's nothing. It's also the permit, but it also permitting the outside requests, right? So if we wanna enable ICMP request from inside to outside, how can we configure that? So to do that, we have to first configure the class map. Class map type, say inspect ICMP. I just naming it ICMP, and the match protocol. Match protocol will be the ICMP. What I've done here, I just making a class map for allowing the ICMP from inside to outside. So then we have to configure the policy map, and the type will be the inspect. That is, then if you check the type will be the inspect, type will be the control logging, right? So I'm using the inspect, and from where to where? LAN to 1. So if we check again the policy map name, right? So we can name anything, right? So I am just putting the name and to 1. So we will use this name later. After that, we have to define the class type. So the class type, if we check, that will be the inspect, because we already used the inspect, and the name class map we have configured, that is the ICMP, right? So what will be the action? The action can be the drop, action can be the inspect, action can be the pass, right? Or policy rule, right? So major the action we can do, that is drop, inspect, and pass. So, but at this moment, if we just drop, it will drop all ICMP request. If we pass, then it will just inside land to one, it will pass. But when the echo reply coming back to the R1, it will drop. So to avoid such situation, we have to inspect, right? So we'll use the inspect command here. So I just configured the policy, security policy, and now we have to apply this security policy into our zone pair. So how we can do that? To configure that part, zone pair is the command, and the security LAN to one is the name, zone pair name, and the service policy. The type was inspect, and the name was LAN to one, same, right? So if you now ping from R1 to R3, see, it's allowing, right? But if you check from R3 to R1 again, ping 2168.12.1, see, it's still blocking because we didn't allow anything from 1 to LAN, right? So now if we check how policy map look like, show policy map, type in show policy map, type in spec zone pair. See, one policy is configured, that is LAN to one, and the class map is ICMP match all, and the project protocol is ICMP, right? And the inspect ICMP packet is 10, right? The default class is match anything will be the drop, right? So in this way, you can configure the class map and to inspect any traffic that you can allow one to LAN or LAN to one. So in this way, you also you can configure from outside to inside also, right? So if you now ping, say I am an R2 router. If you now ping on R2 to R1, let's say R2 to R1, right? So by default, it's allowing self zone file, right? So if you don't allow this way, you have to configure the same zone policy for self also. So how can we do that? So we can do that by configure policy map, type inspect, okay, let's say I am trying to ping 192.168.23.2. So it's allowing, right? I'm trying to ping from R3 to R2. I'm trying to ping R3 to R2. So by default, we are not allowing, when you configure the zone file, it's not allowing from one to another zone. That is LAN zone to one zone, and also one zone to LAN zone. But it's self zone allowing everything from R3 to R2, R2 to R3, right? Because we didn't apply any zone for itself. So how can I actually configure the self zone for the two router? So I am just configuring for 1 to LAN. Oh, sorry, not 1 to LAN. I am for configuring 1 to self. Okay. So by default, all are allowed. I'm not allowing anything or inspecting anything. I just allowing this policy map into the zone pair. So how can we configure the into it on zone pair? The security 1 to self. The source will be the 1 and the destination will be the self. We are we found the self zone created by system already, right? We didn't create the self zone, but it's already in there, right? So we just doing that one, and the service policy type inspect. What would be the name? That the name would be the 1 to self. So if you now ping from R3 to R2, earlier it was successful. Now if you check, it's blocking, right? So in this way, we can configure the self zone also for the router, and we can do anything using this zone-based firewall. So this all about the zone-based firewall. If you have any question, you can raise your hand. Okay, good question. What is a stateful firewall inspection? So I'm coming into that part. The menu of the security. Mr. Shirajul, actually there is no minimum level to maintain. So you have to ensure all the security measures in your network devices, because there is a chance if your if your devices are accessible from internet, then there is a chance to compromise, or hacker can access your network devices and your traffic will be disrupted, right? And also there, if you just to go back our previous class, then we found that lots of attack can happen if you open all the ports in your network, right? So you have to measure maximum, not the minimum level, to maintain the security in your network. And what's the stateful connection? Stateful nothing, but when it's look like I just telling you that the inspection, right? So stateful packet inspection, that means the firewall keep connection all or inspect all the packets that's originating from source, and when it's coming back, it's keep tracking. So stateful firewall nothing, it just keep tracking all the connection that's originating from is inside to outside. That is stateful. And stateless firewall is not nothing. It's not keep tracking any of your connection that's originating from source uh, inside to outside. So when we'll have the final quiz of the webinar, you will. I think Mr. Ibrahim can tell better about that. So I think it will be after 1 week later, if I'm not wrong. Ibrahim, can you answer this question? Ibrahim, you there? Okay. I think Ibrahim will give you answer in this question. And if forwarding our next topic. So this is all about this firewall and the ASA. What is the ASA? It's Cisco Adaptive Security Appliance. So what he will do? He just the firewall is give the barrier between your trusted and untrusted network. So we already know about what will be your trusted and what will be trusted. So your LAN network always will be the trusted network, right? So and the one side that it is belongs to the internet always on untrusted network. So what firewall do? Firewall uh, works as a barrier in between trusted and untrusted network. So it's place the path in between them to ensure the security, or you can permitting or DNA traffic based on your policy. So Cisco Adaptive Security Appliance is a software. It also has the software based, or it has the appliance also. So you can do the security policy on that to ensure the security of your network. So it's already in here the stateful filtering, and the firewall is stateful with the keep tracking all the incoming and outgoing connection. I already said that. And packet inspection. Packet inspection means firewall can inspect up to layer 7 of the SL layer. That means it can look application, date, even the payload. That means when any traffic goes via firewall, it can inspect up to layer 7, and also the payload, which data you are sending through the firewall. Make sense? So it can inspect any packet. And the security zone already, we know that the Cisco router by default will permit and forward all the packet they receive if they have matched route in the routing table. But access list to restrict this, but it also become nightmare for an administrator. To avoid such situation, we can configure the security zone. So I just configure the basic I can configure the basic configuration at this moment. So how can we configure the basic configuration on ASA? So let's move on that part. So this is ASA, what guys, for before going to the security appliances, it will take some time to open the firewall actually. So by this time, what I can tell, that is the security level of the ASA. The security level of the ASA, it's actually indicate how the trusted you can trust your interface, like, compared to the other interface. That means when you say this is your LAN, this will be your trusted network, right? And when you say this is one, it will be the untrusted network. So how you will define what will be the your trusted and what will be your untrusted network. The level of doing that, or security levels of the ASA, if you configure the it's outside, then by default the level would be the 0. 0 means the lowest security level there is on ASA, and the by default is assigned to the outside interface. since there is no security, no lower security level, this means that traffic from outside to inside unable to reach. And the security level for inside is 100. When you configure the interface as a inside, by default it will take 100 for your LAN. So it's ensure your the interface is secure. Then you can communicate from inside to outside, but not outside to inside, because the security level of outside is 0. That's why you can't go from outside to inside. If you want to move from outside one side or outside to inside, then you have to configure the access list. But for going inside to outside, don't need, by default it's allowed. Another, for we can configure DMZ, that in between 1 to 99. So you can manually apply those things, and we can apply the security level for our DMZ. So there's the security level of ASA. So how we can configure the security level? Let's look into that part. So same things, you have to configure the hostname first. So this is your ASA one. And to configure the interface, so you have to go on gig 0x1, sorry, ETH1, Ethernet 1. So to configuring the security level or zone, the command is name if. So gig 1 under the outside, right? So it will be the outside. So when you configure name if as outside, by default, I said it will take the security level is 0. So when will configure the interface key, sorry, ETH 0 and name if inside, it will take, by default, the security value is 100, right? So you don't need to configure that part. So if you want to configure the IP address of the inside, it's same as like as the router. IP address 192.168, say 1.1, and that 255 to 55 to 55.0, and also no shard. And same way for Ethernet 1. Say that is 10.254. Oops. If okay, if I here you don't need, if you use the class full, then you don't need to assign the subnet pass. It will automatically take in the class C subnet pass. If you check show interface IP brief, you see it's automatically taken. So this is the basic configuration of the ASA, what you can do to accessing the ASA. After that, you can configure the ASA configuration from CLI. Also, you can do it from GUI, I mean ASDN. So it's that our time almost finished. So I have to conclude this lesson, conclude today's lesson now. So if you guys any question about ASA, you can raise your hand. Actually, we have covered basic things, not lots of things. ASA is, we can configure on ASA lots of things, but actually it's not possible within 2, 3, or 6 hours to configure all the things on ASA, right? So guys, if you have any question, you can write down our question answer section. Or if you have any question, you can raise your hand. Okay, Mr. Had, please tell me.
Yes, sir. Today this is our last class.
Yes.
So in the last class, you can give some intrinsic value to us. How we can exploit in the networking positions in multinational or local company. Have any tricks how we can get the better options?
I didn't get you actually. If you are trying to say how we can mitigate network intrusion, or how we can secure our network. So I can say you have to measure all the policy that we have tried to cover in previous two days, that is management plan, security, control plan, security, also the security for the network from layer 2 to layer 7, right? So to ensure that, so you have to know about all the things from your network, which traffic you're trying to access from inside to outside and outside to inside, which traffic you have to allow. Based, if you know about all the traffic that you need to allow from inside to outside and outside to inside, then you can configure the policy based on that. But if you configure the policy blindly, then all the users will face the issue from your network. Because if you block, like if I block say DNI IP in any command on the outside border router, right? So it will block everything that the request coming from outside to inside, but it can be a legit traffic, right? So you have to first you have to know first which traffic you, or you have to permit, which traffic you have to block, right? So if you know everything on your network, then you can measure security measure from for your network. Make sense, Mr.
Yes,
Ahad?
yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other question?
So participant from Bangladesh, if you want to ask any question, you can ask in Bangla. Don't hesitate for language.
Sir, if you don't mind, I can ask another questions.
Sure, you can. If you are from Bangladesh, you can ask Bengali also.
No problem. I can compatible with English. So my point is that our goal is to become the better networking job. So can you give some suggestion how we can get the better job in the networking field? Showing
I got your question, Mr. But it's I don't know about how actually you are doing right now, and what's the status of your skill level. So if you broadly, if you wanna get job in network side, you have to choose which track you are trying to do work, right? So if you like I mean say if you are trying to get job in security sector, then you have to concentrate on security topics, related topics, right? So if you are trying to get job like routing and switching part, then you have to consider that part, right? So first you have to think what track you will choose, right? After that you will decide which track, which subject, which you need to read, or you have to cover up, right? So first you have to make sure what you will do, and which is better for you, and what you have to do, right? So I don't know actually what you are trying right now. So if I know detail about that, I can suggest.
thank you.